Let me kind of get myself situated. And here we go. Awesome. So let's see here. Share with you guys my screen. Everyone been good as of late? Awesome. All right. And feel free to interrupt if at some point I get delayed again and it just acts up on me. I'd rather know than go 10 minutes into something where you guys can't hear me. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. All right. All right, so leadership equipment workshop, guys, 8/29. It's been a long month. We haven't really been in front of each other, and I understand that, but I did do a special GM edition of a leadership equipment call that was earlier in the month. And although that was a longer call and it was actually obviously in person, I'm going to pull a little bit from that, and then over the next few calls kind of pull from what we did at the GM convention or the retreat as it was known. But fret not, it's not going to be a repeat necessarily of what you as GMs went through. There'll be some new material along the way just the same. So, all right. And I know Tyler's going to be jumping on too. Fortunately, he got a flat tire on his way into the park. So stay tuned for Tyler. Keep your eyes peeled for him. All right, so looking at 83% and 5%, we know these stats all too well. 83% of businesses believe they have to have leadership development at all levels, whereas only 5% actually do something about it. And aren't you glad we are that 5%? Not just learning and growing and doing things like the Leadership 101 class that's for starting shift managers that Wade has been putting individuals through, and he did last week. But doing these leadership equipping workshop calls as well, it's sort of the ongoing development piece that we're priding ourselves on. And so both things are necessary along with the processes and the procedures that we are putting out there each and every day. And so that's the 5% we're inclined to do. And when we're doing, we're actually achieving something that many other organizations are just not doing. And that's something to be excited for. Quick icebreaker, and I know we're kind of fixed for time and we have a lot of material to go through, but love having a little icebreaker here. Where's the scariest place you have ever been? And beyond that, feel free to chat or add into the chat or unmute yourself. I'd love to hear from a couple of you. But where's the scariest place you've ever been, or maybe the scariest situation you've ever found yourself in? And again, please use the chat there, the chat box that is. And if you want to unmute and you want to share, that would be awesome. Got to think about it. So Australia, Mark. All right, Australia. The kangaroos. Those rabid kangaroos.
I'll tell you guys about an experience.
I got to ask, what's the reason for it? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to do. I didn't know you were going to keep going. Oh,
no, that's fine. That's fine. It's good.
No, yeah, so I'm severely afraid of heights, and I went to face that a few years ago. And so I went ziplining, and on the zip line, like, finale, I guess you'd call it. I don't know how tall it was in the air. I mean, I was above mountains, and I did it wrong, and I didn't put my feet up right, and I was hanging there for like 30 minutes, just like dangling on the zip line. So someone had to come and get me and push me the rest of the way, and like it was horrible. Like it was just god awful, and I'll never forget it. So, as soon as you asked that, I knew the immediate answer.
Yeah, and most of us do, but not always, right? We have different reasons for why we're fearful of a situation. Sometimes it's actually the situation, or it's the place, or both, right?
Yeah, right.
Man, we got downtown Detroit after dark on a side street after getting lost. You got to get out more, Wade. It ain't that scary. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. That's funny. The mosh pit at a punk band. All right. Thought I was going to die. Yeah, that can be pretty scary. Yeah, I used to be in some of those. Can't breathe. Not enjoyable. Cody doesn't get scared. Okay, then. He's not scared. I like that. All right. And yeah, Patrick, you had shared being stuck in the Washington, D.C. Dulles Airport before at the last conference, or at the only conference we've done. Okay. And I'm not a big fan of spiders either, Mark. So yeah, keep adding your voice, guys, as we go. Thank you for the shares. I'd have to think I'd have to think through what was the scariest moment for me. I know we were doing a bad nighter with some friends, and it was like a
Lance, I think we lost you.
definitely a nail biter and a scary moment. Probably not the scariest, but definitely one of those moments that kind of stay with you, like you mentioned, Hannah. Definitely impacted me, and I thought, okay, yeah, I'll never get off the beaten track again, especially in a wooded area at 2 a.m. So thankfully I'm here and no bites. So guys, keep sharing as you go, and we'll find something for Cody to be scared of. I'm sure of it. All right, so moving on, guys. I debuted this sort of at the GM convention. It's just something I borrowed, but sort of the acronym ACT. Why are you kind of thinking through this as we have these calls? What can you apply to your life? What can you change, see about yourself? And what can you teach to someone else to help them? So be thinking through this. How do I apply this? How can I change something about myself? And then how can I teach someone else in order to help them? Vision, to create leaders, guys, of integrity that believe their words and actions must be connected, leaders of moral character that compassionately lead, leaders that grow and have the humility and heart to grow others, leaders who have boundaries and responsibly fill out their spheres of authority and influence, leaders that set and hold standards of unmatched quality. I unpacked this at the GM convention because, again, it can't just be something we recite, that I embrace on these calls, or that we have written somewhere in an office. It has to be how we go about things, or what's the point. And so that's the vision that we're casting for these leadership calls, and really what we're trying to cultivate. Ways to grow, you guys have heard me say this before. Be vulnerable, guys, be real, take down that I know that filter. Hey, I've heard this before. Again, we're going to go through some things that are the basics, but in the basics, we get to the greater works that we will have here as leaders in the development piece here. Actively engage as well, guys. Converse, question, be present, ask for feedback, and really be transformed as a leader. Objectives for today. The foundations of the house. We've been building this thing out, guys. Kind of looking at that image at the bottom right. And we are just kind of adding decor to what we've been building here. And so some of the things we're going to talk about is accountability culture. That's a big one. We have talked about accountability, but we're going to talk about the culture piece. Also adopting a new mindset. We'll share a quick video that I did share at the GM convention, and I think it's kind of a fun video, and that will kind of be the send off for this call. And then, of course, giving you something you can use today. That's a big part of this. All right, so guys, we're trying all sorts of new stuff. Are you aware of that? Whether stuff in the last week or 2 month, or even in the last 6 months, we've added a lot of new things. And this is just a sample of them. The Innovative Heights report card, what we do at the end of the night and at the beginning. I didn't even add this, but really the forms, the automated forms that we've been doing, that Shannon produced, and it's just made life a lot easier. Other things, leadership equipping workshop, the call that you're on. The Leadership 101 class that is for all starting shift managers that Wade's been putting everyone through. Beyond that, orientation flip binder video must be happening. The hourly cleaning checklist, that's a big one right there, as well as team member uniform poster, and you, of course, could guess it, the manager uniform poster as well, all the way to 12 systems, which really other things. And 12, in a lot of ways, it's sort of the skeletal system. It's the framework for how we operate in our culture. If the core values that we have are sort of the DNA that kind of keeps us honest and moving forward as we even evolve and change over time, the 12 systems is that framework. It's the skeletal system. And at the end of the day, it can't just be no different than the vision statement being on a wall somewhere, but not really meaning much. Just the same, we can't just have clipboards up on the wall and not being utilized, right? And so the 12 systems is part of the new things that we're doing. But let's take a moment and let's pause. Right here, I want to show you, this is, we talked about fearful places that people may have found themselves in. No one really remarked about weather producing fearful places, but I can imagine that if you were in a situation where the walls were coming in on you due to weather, be it a tornado, or in this case, in this picture, the aftermath of a hurricane, well, you would probably find yourself scared, right? Afraid. This is, like I said, a picture of the aftermath of a hurricane. And I want to just kind of pause here and kind of talk through sort of these kind of situations. And although we have a lot of new things coming at us, we can find ourselves on the other side of just really a bad situation. This, like I said, is the sign of a hurricane that had come through. If I were to have another go at something that has produced fear in me, I was actually on the other side of a very close call with a tornado. Definitely not an enjoyable time. Thankfully, didn't touch down where I was at, but again, can be pretty scary. Want to mention a guy by the name of Ed Sutt. Now, Ed Sutt will be somebody I probably never talk about ever again on any one of these calls or even in park. Ed Sutt, though, is kind of important, at least for what I'm talking about today. Ed Sutt was the son, and well, he's still alive, is the son of a builder. He himself wasn't necessarily a great builder, but he knew enough about building. And maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. He's not necessarily a celebrity, but Ed Sutt, although he couldn't work with his hands like his father could, he knew enough about buildings and wanted to embrace sort of the work of his father. And so one of the things that he started looking into was the destruction, the aftermath of houses like this, cities and towns like the picture shown here, after hurricanes, after tornadoes, earthquakes, you name it. And after looking at these sort of situations, he realized that in the aftermath, although the materials were all different, in fact, some houses that had fallen were made of incredibly expensive materials. And people were paying a lot of money for these kind of houses that were supposed to withstand the storms. But the reality was they were all coming down just the same, be it steel, brick and mortar, didn't matter. They were coming down, and yet he houses these buildings that were just taken in a storm and falling to the pressures of it. And it was the nail. It was the nail that was giving with these houses, with these buildings. And so he took a lot of time to develop a patented design for a nail that would hold in the midst of the storm. Winds, earthquakes, you name it, it would hold things together. He spent years of his own time and his own money, his own resources, and of course looked into it, researched it, came up with a nail called the Hurricane nail. It was put into use in the early 2000s. It's still in use today and has saved people's lives. It has saved businesses and insurance companies millions upon millions of dollars. And of course, it's a patented design, and he's done well for himself since. But he saw there was a need. He filled that need with this particular technology, a simple nail. But that's the one thing that was common. Didn't matter about the materials. It was the nail holding it all together. And so it was not the materials, like I said, or the architecture or the builder, although they tried many things, but the nail. It was the fastener. It's what's holding it all together. So similarly, in our world, it's not necessarily the system or the process or the people. And it's not that we can't stand to improve the systems, the process, the people, and we'll continue to do that. But often, guys, it's about accountability. It's the nail, it's the fastener that commits our actions to our results. And so if you can just envision it's the nail is the accountability our everyday results. And there it is. That's the Earthquake nail. Very simple design. It's obviously a little different than maybe most nails you've seen, but it's used everywhere because of what it's been able to accomplish in the midst of storms. And don't we have them? We have storms coming at us every day. The guest experience, team member issues, people call. But accountability will hold us fast. It will keep us where we need to go. It will commit the systems that we have to put them in motion in just the right way. All right. So moving on, guys, from accountability or just building on that, want to just kind of, I want to leave you with this or move forward with this. Leadership is scarce because few people are willing to embrace the discomfort required to do it. Quote from Seth Godin, a writer that I follow quite a bit of his stuff. And I believe this. Leadership is scarce because few people are willing to embrace the discomfort required to do it. We all have people we know that work in different industries and do different types of jobs. I know very few people outside of you that work in our industry, but I know other managers, and I know many that don't manage and don't lead, and they don't do what we do. And they don't necessarily have the discomforts that we do, but they have different discomforts. They really do. But it is scarce. And when leadership is scarce, that means it's valuable. And so you guys are valuable. What we're producing as a group is valuable, both to ourselves and to our team. And so as we look at accountability, you may have heard me talk about it many times over, and it's like, well, that's old hat. But the reality is we can always stand to grow in this area to improve the nail that we've been using, right? To borrow that analogy, to keep that moving forward. And so accountability, as a reminder, guys, it's setting clear expectations, following up, and giving feedback and coaching. But more than that, guys, we want to produce a culture of accountability. That's something entirely different, but builds on the same premise. And so let's add to that. What is a culture of accountability? Well, it's two-way feedback and coaching. That means there's transparency. What does two-way mean? Ultimately, you're going to get feedback and coaching from others around you, your peers even. And so there's that feedback, that coaching dynamic that must be two-way. Iron sharpens iron. Beyond that, guys, it's setting goals, and I'll elaborate on that. And then finally, but not at all the least important, holding yourself accountable. A culture of accountability without leaders, GMs, regionals that are not accountable, well, we're sunk. And so holding yourself accountable is a key piece of that, and we'll build from there. So clear expectations. We've done this before. Simple example. And I've used this one many times. Hey, Johnny, new guy, can you please go outside and clean the parking lot? Is there a better way to give a clear expectation? Is there a clear expectation of this individual, Johnny, new guy, that you could give? And if so, feel free to unmute yourself, because this is someone we're sending outside to clean the parking lot. And this is just one example of many. But how might you give a clearer example to Johnny, new guy?
I actually want to give a little story. This happened to me my very first week at Jump Street, my first job, and I was asked to go clean the parking lot. And I didn't know what that meant. That's what they said. That's all they said. And me, I was too shy to be like, well, what does that mean? I didn't want to sound stupid. So I spent about a whole 10 minutes trying to figure that out. I didn't know where the broom was, so I had to go find that. So yeah, this is a really great example. So for me, I would walk out there with them and just kind of point out hey, just there's just trash on the ground. We can get this swept up, put it in the trash can right over here. Might even take the trash out, just really lay out what you're doing. But yeah, it's a really good example, Lance, that happened to me as the new guy. I was the new guy. It was my first week.
Awesome. Yeah, could have just as well been Hannah, new guy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, one way you could frame that, what's one way you would frame it a little bit differently if you had another shot at it? Because you've had many shots at it since, right? Because you do this with your team, I'm sure. You got blown over trash from the neighboring store and whatnot there in Murfreesboro. So what's one way that you have framed this particular expectation to your team?
I would just, for me, the way I go about it is I always give the why. So I'd be like, hey, it's Saturday. This actually happened this past week. So this is how I went about it. It was a Sunday morning and we went out there and the parking lot was littered. And so my opening employee, I was like, hey, I know this isn't like the greatest job, but I'm going to give you this broom right here. If you want to walk outside with me. And I was like, there's Arby's trash all across the parking lot. And then if we want to, I had them wipe along the doors too, because there are cigarette butts and everything along there. I mean, it's all about like telling them how to do it, showing them. And then of course, once it's done, just following up with like that, hey, great job. Let's walk out there together and make sure it was done fully, and then we're done with it. So, I mean, it's just all about like the kind of like what Wade put in the chat. Tell, show, observe, and praise.
Yeah, T-slop, right?
Right.
Every time I say it, I always say, why am I saying this? But we always get back to it, right? So T-slop, that's great. That's awesome. And I appreciate the share, Hannah. I mean, I could see myself framing this something along the lines of, hey, Johnny, new guy, want to go outside with you, but before we do, we have some things to clean. If you could just grab some disposable gloves and a couple trash bags, and then I'm going to show you some areas that we need to clean up. And then maybe I would actually go out there and actually do some of that, right? Setting the standards, showing the expectations, giving that clear example. And then I would probably wrap up something along the lines of, hey, how long do you think it's going to take you? Johnny, new guy might come back with, probably about 25 minutes. I might say, well, I thought 15, so let's kind of split the difference. How about 20 minutes? And then follow up with me when you're done. Right there, I'm building into the accountability. I'm putting it on them, right? I'm trying to grow and develop them to come to me, to follow up, to work within what I'm expecting, right? So there's different ways to come at this, but obviously just saying, hey, can you please go outside and clean the parking lot? Can mean many things. How many times have we taught our team members or shown our team members, you need to mop, well, rather sweep before you mop, right? How many times have we had to do that as they're mopping along and they haven't swept? So it's an example we use. It's a very basic example, but again, that undergirds some of the greater things that we're trying to accomplish. So beyond that, we want to follow up. And if you're really good, you can build that right into your clear expectations. Like I said, adding that follow-up. And the follow-up doesn't have to happen at the very end. It can happen throughout the entire time, right? It's an hour of someone doing a limbo inspection, and you're following up through their journey of doing it, right? And giving your thoughts around it. And so that follow-up has a timeline. It's thorough. So be thorough with your follow-ups and use proximity, meaning get in close with your team members, get in close with your fellow leaders. And then feedback, guys. It's immediate. It's honest. Be factual. Coach in the midst of that feedback. And again, it's two-way. I can't stress enough the immediate part, though. Citing something that happened 2 weeks ago, we know loses its effectiveness. You can't give the feedback very well. I mean, you can, but how well is that going to hold? I've seen delayed SMGs that somehow find their way in front of us, 2-3 months after they actually happened to that said guest. And it's like, well, that was 3 months ago. What do you want me to do with that now? The reality is it needs to be immediate. It should be honest, be factual, and coach in the midst of that feedback. And then set goals. Goals, it's an interesting thing. And, for time's sake, I'm not going to go too much into the goal setting piece, but other than, weeks ago or even months ago, I asked of many of you the question, does your team know when it's winning? And for many, actually 3 out of 9 parks gave me an answer that I think they themselves were maybe not as sure about. And the 4th park came in a little late and gave their answer, which they for sure were not sure about. That left 5 parks not really citing how they know when they're winning. There's a really good video out there by Simon Sinek that actually talks about the infinite game versus the finite game. And I don't want to go too far into that. I'll borrow some concepts from it, but essentially kind of finds its way into a lot of work cultures where they don't set goals necessarily because of we're kind of in this infinite game. Guest experience is guest experience. And every day we're building on something that is building on something and so on and so forth. But the reality is we do set goals and we must set goals. And you guys put together sky huddle goals. And that's the finite game, because at the end of the day, if we're not coming back to those sky huddles and we're not talking about the things that we did or did not accomplish, then we're not really setting goals. Or we're just throwing something out there, but we're not coming back to it. And so that's an important piece of the puzzle, especially with accountability. You got to believe that as above park leaders, we're going to be coming into your parks and we're going to be looking for those 12 systems to be in operation. Because again, we didn't just talk about it to talk about something new and different. No, it was to nail something to the wall and make that the way we do things, right? And that's culture, by and large, is the way we go about doing things. And so setting goals is really important. And again, I don't want to get too much into the infinite game or finite game, but it's a really interesting concept. And I think it's really a mesh of both. We have to have sort of the long game in mind and then the short game as well. So goals are really important. Like I said, they are vital, or they are important. Beyond that, guys, and the last thing really in accountability culture is hold yourself accountable. It's servant leadership. It's you wouldn't ask anybody to do something you're not willing to do yourself. It's showing up. It's actually mirroring back to your team what you expect. You can't do that from afar. You can't do that aloof. You can't do that away. It's holding yourself first and foremost accountable. Listen, I've joked about it before, but it's not really a joke. At the end of the day, it's my living reality I've had to work through personally over the years, sort of a recovering perfectionist. And I can tell you, I hold myself to a higher level than most anybody's ever held me to, sometimes to my detriment. That's not necessarily healthy, but I've worked through it over the years. I'm definitely not the way I used to be. But that's still to say we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to do that. If we're not willing to do that, then how can we hold other people accountable? It's a big part of it. And so it starts with you. And so with accountability, it's so basic and it's so easy and it's so straightforward. There's not a whole lot of moving parts and pieces to it. But like a simple nail, it's what holds the entire framework together. That nail helps us stay intact when the storms of life hit us, the storms of the business hit us. So why don't we do it? Even though it starts with us, why don't we do it? Why don't our leaders or our leads or our team members hold themselves accountable, or why are they not willing to be held accountable? Well, there's a number of reasons. Is it apathy? Is it laziness? I don't think so. Not with the leaders that we have on the line here today. I truly believe it's not apathy or laziness, being dispassionate. Maybe it's making assumptions though. Maybe it's making assumptions that something's going to occur, someone else is going to do it. Or you're hoping someone else will, like I just said. What about this one? I don't want to micromanage them. Now, this has been a big part of a lot of working cultures. It's actually really been happening in a lot of work cultures for the last 30 some years, sort of a movement. It's called like the war on talent. Actually, if you've ever, if you're kind of a researcher, look into it. It's a real thing, where there was sort of this boom phase of cultures where we want to make where you work to be so hospitable. We're talking foosball, we're talking casual Fridays, that sort of thing, right? And now it's just kind of been, it's kind of gone into supernova mode. We don't want anybody to be held accountable. We don't want anybody to feel micromanaged. We want total autonomy. Do as you do, be as you please. But the reality is, accountability is not micromanaging. It's just not. It never has been. And a culture where you can just do whatever you want is not playing to win. It's not going after a pursuit of becoming a better company, really taking the industry by storm, the things that we're trying to accomplish, the things I know we can with the leaders that are on this call and beyond this call. And so it's not micromanaging at all. In fact, it's not all about winning. I know I talk a lot about that. It is about how you play the game. And yet when we play the game, it feels good to win. And there's nothing wrong with that. And even in the games that have no winners or losers, we definitely know when we're doing well in it and when we're not doing well with it. So I don't want to micromanage them. It's a prevailing lie. It's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie, guys. Accountability is not micromanaging or having no trust in your team. It's just not. So get that out of your framework of how you manage. I don't want to lead them that way. I don't want to manage them that way. I want to be really empathetic. I don't want to do any of that. But the reality is, Accountability is building in intentionality around celebrating your team, and it's trusting but verifying that they are performing with excellence. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, if you don't hold them accountable, both those doing great things and those doing poor things, you're going to have a location with very, very low morale. You just will. Those who are doing great, they're going to leave you because you're allowing those who are not doing great to just stay where they're at and bring everybody else down with them. And it's a race to the bottom. And you've heard me say that before. So accountability is building in intentionality. It's the celebrating moments. It's the moments where you say, job well done. That actually comes out of accountability. So it's not a bad word. It's a good thing. And it's trusting but verifying that they're performing with excellence. I do this often. And when I don't, I have to hold myself accountable and say, I should have done better on my part. I need to hold people accountable. And by doing that, I'm trusting you, yes, but I'm verifying. Why? Because I'm held accountable. And that's the way we need to look at it. What's another reason why we don't hold others accountable? Well, let's just start with you again. It may be any one of these things. Fear of giving it, giving the feedback, giving the follow-up. Fear of reception. How are they going to receive me? Fear of how you will be seen. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of what could happen. Fear of not knowing what to do next. It's fear. Fear continues to push and press and do all sorts of things to you as a leader. And you may say, no, I hold my people accountable. I just, haven't gotten around to it. And maybe you don't think it's fear at play, but there's many a great leader that actually wanted to be liked, be enjoyed, when really they should have been wanting to be respected. And the reality is they lived in the fear of how am I being perceived by others? And so they didn't want to hold people accountable. So here's a quick little video. I found it to be quite enjoyable because I'm quite a fan of this particular show, and maybe a couple ways you can go about conquering your own fears. But before we get there, I'm going to ask the question, are you comfortable in your work as a leader? Are you comfortable? I asked this of GMs at the convention just a few weeks back, and most said, yeah, I think I am. Well, let me just tell you, if you're not uncomfortable in your work as a leader, it's almost certain you're not reaching your potential as a leader. And so we should embrace the uncomfortable, because when we do, we become that much better leaders. We're actually striving for more potential as a leader. And now a quick video for you guys. All right. Anybody follow that show? Legendary. Love it. Yeah, probably not the best approach to conquering fear. But Patrick, if you ever want to wear a fear shirt, and Cody, who has no fear, he might need some fear.
I mean, I honestly don't like my chances in that fight. I mean, I don't like my chances. Nope.
Yeah. Have to have a little office in the middle of a work day on a Monday here coming out of summer. I told you it would be a summer party, so summer splash. But yeah, I wanted to show that video. It's a little long, so I appreciate you guys staying with me on it. And obviously more tongue-in-cheek and humor than anything else. But how many times do we come at fear in a similar way? We think that might be the best approach to fear. That's how we'll go about fear. There's a number of ways we can try to impact that. And so, the thing is, when we don't go at fear, though, there's a fallout. There almost always is. And we can experience all sorts of things, from disengagement to we actually give and we receive less feedback. Purpose can be unclear. We can look for absolutes, just sort of blanket responses to things, right? It's black and it's white, and that's just the way it is, because it's that much easier to move through if we just kind of solidify an absolute. We try to seek control. Maybe in a moment of panic, we're like, okay, now I'm going to try to wrestle this thing down, kind of like Ryan was to wrestle down Mose. But the reality is we often find ourselves in avoidance. We just don't want to engage, and we don't press and we don't push. One example I look at, and I've actually used before, and some of you guys, this is a repeat, is just in my own walk, in my own life. And rather than get too personal, I just want to kind of speak to a manager that I managed some years ago who is still in this industry, not with our particular group here at Innovative Heights, but she's still going really well and going really strong in her location with her company. As a young manager, and this was now many years ago, brought her on as a GM, this particular individual, and just to not use her name, I'll call her Pam. We'll kind of stay with the office piece here. Pam from The Office. Pam was a newer GM, and Pam was in a very busy brand new park, as all new parks are, and was dealing with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of pressure. Her operations manager, I'll just call Jim, was really like Cool Hand Luke, really even keel, nicest guy in the world, and never seemed at all shook up by anything. He stayed the course. At times it was kind of like, wow, is there a pulse, right? I mean, we would be having the craziest moments, and it was like, are you alive in there? And he was a great guy, and he was a great operations manager. But her as a GM, she really struggled, especially on those busier nights. You've been there before. And would often call me on a Friday night glow, that sort of thing, and would tell me that she's currently outside breathing in a paper bag as she's hyperventilating, or trying not to, because of the situation she's in. She had a parent go off on her on the platform. Maybe there was a scuffle, a fight, or whatever, and she was stressed to the max and would tell me with a paper bag that she was breathing in and out. I've just about had it. I don't think I can do this any longer. And she was only a few months into this crazy industry that we all know and love. Wow. This individual, I would often say, well, you got to tell me when the water's not so much up to your neck. Tell me when the water's up to your knees. Because if you're drowning in that moment, I can't do much to help you. But let's kind of work through some of your fear dynamics, because that's really what it is. And for her, I told her anxiety and stress and all that you're going through, it's really just practicing failure in advance. And that's really all it is. And it's the same for accountability. Then we don't hold people accountable because we're fearful of how they're going to react to the accountability piece. When you hold them accountable, are they going to run? Are they going to leave? Are they going to quit on me? If I press a little harder on one of my managers, they have to open up their schedule a little bit more. We have to do something a little different here. Maybe they just will up and leave. I won't have them any longer. Well, yeah, that may end up being the reality. But what if you don't say anything at all? And so I worked with this particular manager, and I helped her kind of see her fear. And one of the things that I talked to her about and walked her through was bring each event to its climax. Bring it to the worst situation and then walk your way back from it. Bring it to the greatest fallout from that fearful situation. And she did that. She did that quite often, until the point where she didn't have to do that any longer. Because as she pulled herself back from the worst case scenario, she realized often that wasn't the way it was going to be, right? That wasn't going to be the worst case. Yeah, that could happen, but it was a narrow percentage of times in which that would actually happen. And so it brought her into a place where she could face the fear. She could understand that most of the time that didn't happen. It just didn't. And so in a way, she embraced it. She learned to work with it and kind of guide herself through decision-making around that fear dynamic. And so I think that's true for just about any of us, that if we engage with a fearful situation, the uncomfortableness of it, the discomfort of it, we can actually hone in on it and use it to our advantage each and every time. I've seen it in my own life, and I believe that's the same for you guys as well. So kind of moving through that, guys, overcoming fear. When we do that like the GM I was talking about, who is still in this industry here in 2022, she started in 2016, and she's doing exceptionally well. She's actually gotten promotions. She's been able to kind of weather the storm. She's been able to overcome her fears. She became more teachable. Most do. She became more passionate. When you do this, you embrace making mistakes. You just embrace it because you realize the failures that you're coming into actually are key learnings that will only make you better. And you'll hold yourself and others accountable because you overcame your fear. You've come in alignment with it. Because you never truly overcome it, but you can partner with it and you can make it work for you, not against you. What's some other things? When that fear starts to absolve itself, it starts to shift. You grow, they grow, that's your people. The experience improves, the business improves. We experience increase as a location, as a company. You experience true authority, true influence, and maybe the most important thing, guys, a culture that we all want to be leaders of. That's what we step into when we overcome the fear of holding others accountable. Because I believe that's at the center of why we don't. Sometimes it's what we're tolerating, yes, but why are we tolerating it? We're tolerating not following through on certain things. Why? Because of the fear component around it. Staffing is sparse. We don't have a lot of people. I don't want to press. I don't want to push. We got to open the doors tomorrow. Guys, bring your fear of whatever it may be to the end conclusion. And so again, to that GM who's still with the business, still with the industry that we all know and love and that we're a part of, she struggled to hold her own team members accountable. It was fear. I don't want to press on that manager. They may leave me tomorrow if I press too hard. Again, with respect, if I press and I push. The reality was, when I brought her to the sort of the end of it, she realized, well, if they were to leave, and I was absolutely fair with them, and I was absolutely clear with my expectations of them, and they still leave, what's the worst that could happen? Well, we'll still open the doors tomorrow. We'll borrow a manager from somewhere else. Or, hey, maybe I have 2 people that I'm considering for a future manager. So don't pull your punches. Always do it with respect, yes. But overcome the fear of holding people accountable. We must do this to move things ahead, or all the things that we're putting into motion won't matter one bit. So I want to talk a little bit. I want to leave you with this, guys, as we kind of near the back end of our hour. And I know it's been purely a download, just about some shares along the way. But I want to show you this video that really is sort of that overcoming fear, and then what do we do with it? Because it is a mentality. And maybe many of you have seen this video, or maybe you haven't. But I'm going to show this video because there were some GMs that really wanted to share this with many of you. So this is Lessons from the Lion. I love this video, and we'll kind of wrap up on this note.
If the lion is the king of the jungle, how can he be the king of the jungle? If he's not the biggest, the elephant is probably one of the biggest. He can't be the fastest because that's a cheetah. He can't be the smartest. So he's not the biggest, the fastest, or the smartest. So how does a lion become the king of the jungle? His mentality. That's the only difference of a lion and an elephant. When a lion walks up and sees an elephant, he thinks lunch. An elephant thinks run. And it's all mentality. Because when a male lion walks up, he may be outnumbered by a pack of hyenas, but I'm king of my jungle because of my mentality.
What happens when you're a gazelle and you're not being pushed? You're not being prodded. You're not given a reward. Nobody's encouraging you. What happens when you're a gazelle and the lion's not chasing anymore? You stop running.
What happens when you're a lion? When you're a lion, it does not make a difference. You realize that if your family is going to eat, that if that pack of lions is to survive, then you gotta go hunt.
A part of being a beast just ain't eating a gazelle. A part of being a beast is the hunt.
It's the hunt that they're excited about. They like to see the gazelles run. Then boom, they take off. Because real lions like to hunt. They love the process just as much as they love the prize. And some of y'all just want to score. You don't like the process. You're not in love with the process. A true hunter's goal is not the prize. A true hunter's goal is to hunt. That's what they live for. They live to hunt. They don't just live to catch it. It's the whole process. When you are a true hunter, you don't go by time. You go by the gazelle. When you are a true hunter, you hunt until you get a gazelle, and you don't stop until you get one. And then you get another, and then you get another, and you get another. If you're going to do what you say you're going to do, be what you say you're going to be, you're going to have to lion me out. You a gazelle, you're going to come up short. You a gazelle, you're going to have an average experience. You a student, I need you in lion mode. You an entrepreneur, I need you in lion mode. You trying to lose weight, lion mode. You can't do nothing significant in gazelle mode, nothing. Nothing impressive happened in gazelle mode. Nothing happened in run mode, give up mode, quit mode, scared mode, fearful mode. Nothing happened. Everything happened in lion mode, like I'm coming to get you.
Whew. Awesome. Love that video. Motivational videos don't always click with me. I sometimes think it's, you know, they don't really reflect reality. Some of the moments in time where maybe we're not at that height, we're not at the peak end of something. And yet I think it's worth reminding ourselves that, you know, the lion sleeps, the lion plays, the lion does other things. But I think most importantly, it's to look at the attitude that we have, our perspectives on things, our beliefs and our instincts. And it's the mentality. It's the mentality we bring to things like accountability. It's the mentality we bring to culture and what we're trying to create. When you open your doors on the day, will it be your best shift ever? Are you going into that with that goal being set? Yes, it's a Monday. Yes, it's the back end of summer. Yes, you have a lot of your team members who are aging out of us from the perspective of they're going off and away to college. They're not going to be Sky Zone people anymore. And you're bringing in new recruits. But the reality is it's about attitude, it's about perspective, and it's about running your best shift. Because I truly believe we can have the best run parks in all of Sky Zone, in all of this industry, not just Sky Zone. We can do it, but we have to adopt a mentality and change our focus from just getting through the day into accountability. And it's what we do because it's always been the way we've done it. And so that's lessons from the lion. Wanted to show that video because the reality is that's the same for you. It's attitude, it's perspective, it's belief, it's instinct. It's bringing that each and every day to the park, to each other, to your team. So as a leader, if no one is behind you, then you are not a leader. That was said to me pretty early in my leadership walk. As a leader, if no one is behind you, if you look behind you and there's no one there, you're not a leader. Some would say, then you are just a lost follower. What are you? Maybe that's it. But here's the thing, and hopefully you find this to be of value. Good news, leadership can be learned. It can be taught. You can grow in it. That's why you're taking part in things like this. So I realize there's not a lot of you on this call this time around, and I know it's busy. People are in school, that sort of thing, and it's just a challenge of the late summer. We're going to move to a different scheduling for the fall, the winter. But beyond that, if you're a GM on this call or just a manager on this call, just the same, please lean in on those that lead with you to get on these calls and get caught up on these calls. This one in particular, I think, can land in such a way, could change the way you lead, you manage, because accountability really is everything. It's a mentality. And so the good news, leadership can be learned. I call this the equipping call, but the reality is I'm always kind of struck with how can I make it better? I'm working on some different things we can do to make it a little bit more interactive. Sort of some dry erase programs, things like that, where I can kind of draw actively and you guys can see it. I'm going to make maybe these a little shorter as far as like short videos, spreadsheets, things like, they're not spreadsheets, but worksheets that you guys can reflect on if you weren't able to be on the call itself. But with equipping is never passive, meaning, yes, it's being done unto you, but you're also receiving when you're in a place of being equipped. The job of actually applying this is on you, though, as a leader, you as a manager in the business. Applying these things, it comes with the territory of being on these calls. So you have to apply it. It's impossible in an hour. There's just too much for me to have you apply it here. Yeah, we can sharpen one another, and we've done that a little bit here. It's been mostly a download. But the reality is it's also been equipping. Part of the equipping is now you got to put it into application. You have to actually use this stuff. Right? And so no different than you have a limbal inspection. If you're not inspecting what you expect, that's on you. If you're not dialing into some of these details that we need to dial into, such as the 12 systems, but beyond that, or as we dive into it, onboarding tools that we have. If you're not doing that, then you're not remaining accountable to everything that we're trying to achieve here at Innovative Heights. And it is to be the best, because we can definitely be that because of individuals like yourselves on this call today. So what can you apply to your life? What can you change about yourself? And what can you teach to someone else to help them? Before we wrap up, it's 2:03 my time. Take the time here in the chat. Would love for you to add your voice. And then maybe one or two of you, if you can just answer some of these questions, not all of them, don't have to, but what can you apply to your life? What can you change about yourself? What can you teach to someone else to help them? So if I were to ask one of you just to share openly, what can you apply to your life from this? Who's willing to share? Don't be shy. What can you apply to your life from this call? Be anything. And if that gets too personal, add it to the chat. That's fine too. What can you change about yourself? Add that to the chat. I'm going to come at fear differently. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to be freed up to make mistakes. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. Before my regional departs on the day, I'm going to pull him or her aside and say, hey, what are 3 things I could do different? Or what did you see that maybe I didn't see? Give me something to get better. What are some things you'll change about yourself? Add that in the chat, please. And then I will have someone at least speak on this, because I think this is, yes, personal, but I think it's something we need to be able to vocalize out loud. What can you teach to someone else to help them out of this call? This call here. What can you teach to someone else? And maybe it's just the basics of accountability, but what can you teach someone else to help them from this call? And I don't want to call on people, but I can do it.
I mean, I just posted, trust but verify. And I think that that is something that just kind of applies to all 3 questions. Just what can you, to apply, what can you change about yourself? What can you teach to someone else to help them? Just to kind of like, we just had our safety audit, and there were a lot of things that we got, dinged on or brought up that we've been working on. But it's been one of those pieces where, you're doing everything that you feel like you need to be doing. You're trusting that the team is doing everything that they say they're doing and that you ask them to do. But the follow-up is what I have always struggled with, because I want to trust people almost to a fault. And it's more of just explaining, making sure that they understand, hey, I'm not checking because I don't trust you. I'm checking to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're aligned, because just like you said at the top, hey, Johnny, court monitor, I need you to go out and clean up the parking lot. What does that mean? What does that mean to Patrick? What does that mean to Hannah? What does that mean to Stephanie? What does that mean to Johnny, court monitor? Because they could go outside and see things that I don't see. They could decide, hey, you know what? He said clean up, so somebody let their dog loose, so I'm going to go pick up poop around the pond that's in front of Canton. Or, oddly specific, but I've had that happen. But just what does that look like? Or, hey, I need you to go under courts and check springs. What does it mean to check a spring? What should I be looking for? And while I'm down there, hey, I noticed that the net's not completely hooked on. How do I fix that? Just little things like that, just taking more ownership, knowing, what to be looking for, and then being able to cascade that information down to the rest of the team so that then they can take more ownership.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. And I can tell you, Patrick, trusting but verifying, if you adopt that, and I believe you will, into just the way you go about your leadership and your leading and your managing of your team, you're already doing great things. But I mean, you're just going to climb, and you're gonna be running an incredible park. So awesome. That's great. That's great. Amazing. Anyone else looking to teach unto others some things that you learned from this call? Things you can share, teach. I think the chat's coming alive. That's awesome. Yeah, Isaac, that's great. And again, welcome to the call. Love having you. Can teach that you don't have to know everything in order to try. That's huge. And that's that fear piece. I don't want to make the mistake. I don't want to look like the goofball, right? That's awesome. It's great. Keep adding to the chat, even if you're fearless, like Cody. I don't know if he's on it now, but he doesn't get scared though. I don't see him with you there, Patrick.
He had to run to cafe because I guess we're getting a bunch of oven orders and icy purchases. So
Gotcha.
we're keeping things moving.
Excellent. Good deal. Good deal. No worries. Awesome. Awesome. Very good. Very good. Keep them coming. Got Mark Johnson. Awesome. I feel like I'm already uncomfortable in my leadership, and I'm for sure going to tell him growing it. That's great. That's great. Good deal. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of good things come out of that being uncomfortable, for sure. Other than the whole I'm feeling uncomfortable. So Wade, you can find that being in downtown Detroit after dark, you can land in front of some really good Coney dog places. We got them. You never know. A little uncomfortable, but at least you fill your belly with some good food.
Someday I'll tell you the
Awesome.
story why we did that.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Not here.
No, not here. Fair enough. Fair enough. Good deal. Awesome. For sake of time. I love it. All right, we'll keep adding as you guys go. Like I said, a lot of downloading here today, but it's equipping and it's never passive unless you make it, right? And so engage with the material. It's not just there to just be more theory or knowledge or information, but it's to be something you can practically apply. And if you found, like in this whole call, that there was not one thing that you couldn't apply, well, I'd ask you to watch this all over again because we've recorded it. It'll be on YouTube. But yeah, guys, it's about accountability. It's about the fasteners, the nails that kind of hold it all together. The best processes in the world will just be written things on paper, downloadable documents that are posted somewhere, if we don't hold others accountable. And that's why I felt urgency to really drive this accountability piece once again. We've talked about it before. Listen, there's been like 2 or 3 other topics I wanted to kind of talk about for a while now, and that I was really like eked about, and this was not it. Although I do enjoy this quite a bit. I had other things I wanted to talk about, but I realized with everything we've had going on this past month, the last 6 months really, and it's only, we're getting more and more stuff coming down the pipeline as we build more infrastructure, more framework for what we're trying to accomplish here, that without accountability, we're totally sunk. And so there was an urgency on my end to say, we got to talk about accountability again, especially as we near the back end of third quarter and we go into the hustle and the bustle of fourth quarter. We need to maintain accountability, because when we do, well, we can soar like an eagle, or we can have the mentality like a lion that goes after it every single day. So again, I'll rework this call in the future, but don't just be a passive observer. Please, yes, be equipped, but now apply this stuff into your day, whether it's a Monday like today or the weekend. Beyond this, guys, I'll be changing up maybe when we do these calls, because Mondays are probably not the best for it. It was decent for the summer. But we'll come with a different time that's more optimal for everyone. We'll never land everyone, but at least you guys can go back and watch these in the future. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. It's about 2:12 right now. Any parting words or any thoughts or questions before we wrap up? Anything you're less afraid of now? Or more afraid of? Maybe you're more afraid. You're awfully quiet over there, Stephanie. With your gloves on, working the last days of summer. Fair enough. Fair enough. She's making chicken tenders, I bet. Not raw, though. Fully heated. Ready to rock. Good deal. Awesome. Nice to have you on there, Juan.